Wendy, lovely to have you back with us.
Thank
You've
you,
told
Pippa.
us so many times about the importance of reading the fine print on
Right.
anything you sign. But boy, today's case proves the point, because if a short-term insurance industry veteran like the lady sitting across from me now can be tripped up by a clause in her insurance policy, what hope is there for the rest of us? Christelle Coleman, it's so lovely to have you back with us again. Our listeners have heard her voice many times on this show. She's the CEO of AMI Underwriting Managers, and unfortunately, kind of the victim in today's case. Christelle, lovely to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Just a few words in general before we get to your case. Wendy, a lot of people think travel insurance is a waste of money. Others swear it is an absolutely essential purchase if you're going to travel. Where do you sit in that field?
Well, obviously, one's view is going to be shaped entirely on whether you've had to claim on your travel insurance in the past. So in my case, the many thousands that I've spent over the years on travel insurance have been a total waste. Zero return for my spend. But the upside, of course, is drama-free holidays. If I'd had to claim, well, my holiday plans would have been in tatters, but it wouldn't have been a financial disaster for me, or not entirely a financial disaster. And that's kind of the point of today's story. As with so many insurance policies, all insurance policies, the small print can shave off a huge chunk of what you're expecting as a payout. And that brings us to Christelle's personal story for a change.
Yeah.
So, Christelle, tell us about your travel plans and how you came to make a claim on the travel insurance policy that you'd taken out with Hollard. A policy, by the way, which, as you've just said to us, had all the bells and whistles. You wanted to be totally covered for any travel-related disaster, right?
Absolutely. So I'm not just an insurance specialist. I actually ran Europe Assistance, which is one of the big travel. So I know travel insurance really, really well. And I do tend to pay more to get the most comprehensive cover because I know insurance.
Yeah.
So I had a trip booked overseas with my family. My son broke his leg in a rugby match.
Oh, shame.
Yes. And we had to cancel the trip last minute. And I knew that we had the cover. So went through all the hoops, did everything that I had to do. Tried to cancel my flights, tried to get some refunds from the airplane, from the airlines, and then eventually submitted my net loss to the.
Okay, let's get a bit of detail there. So you had an international flight for
Yes.
the family with BA,
Yes.
and then you had rail tickets with Ital Rail, and then you had some internal flights with some internal airline operators, right?
Correct.
So Ital Rail,
Rail.
Ital Rail, where did that come from? Refunded you in full, did
In
they?
full,
Which was
yes.
lovely, good to
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
And then tell us about the others just briefly.
So actually, just so that you know, travel insurance, one of the conditions of the policy is that you first have to try and cancel everything and get
Yes,
all the
of
money
course.
back,
Yeah.
and you can only claim for the balance. BA, I also paid a bit more, so I had quite a flexible ticket, so I got, I would say, about 90% of the airfare back.
Wow.
But the local flights that I booked myself within Europe were not, there were no refunds
budgety
there.
ones
And
just
I
said sorry.
tried. Let me tell you, I tried
I
to
can
cancel
believe you.
those flights. I had all the chatbots. I had all the call centers. We couldn't cancel. It was non-refundable. They confirmed that. So then I had a net claim
Okay,
that I
so
submitted.
say 10% BA, and then the full amount you'd paid for those two internal
Correct,
flights.
yeah.
Okay, so
Let's talk about the figures, because when
Yes.
it came to it, you submitted that claim, which was somewhere, I think, close to 30,000 Rand in
Yeah,
total.
it
Is that
sounds
right?
it sounds like a lot, but we were a family of 4.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So the flight, it was all flights at the end of the day because I got all the accommodation and everything refunded.
it's good to know.
Yeah.
Yes, and I try and book accommodation where I can get the refund. And Pippa, actually, I was on your show with
Yeah.
COVID. Remember when we talked about all the travel insurance complications
Yes.
Yeah.
when COVID hit? So you're aware of the fact that you can become sick, that something can go
And
wrong.
also being in insurance, you know very well that things go wrong.
Things
Yeah.
go
You
wrong,
plan,
yeah.
hope for the best, but plan for the
And
worst.
it is also a requirement for your visa to have travel
Of
insurance.
course,
So if you
yes.
are going to book travel insurance, it really is my advice to your listeners. Don't just go for the cheapest. Don't think that what you've got with your credit card is going to be okay.
yeah.
Things go wrong. People fall ill before you go. They fall ill when you're overseas. It's not just medical costs. It's also your luggage and, cancellation curtailment, which is under which I
Yeah.
claimed now, which
Yes,
is cancellation
yes.
of the for a valid reason. So we had about 30,000 rand that I submitted.
And what?
And then the big
the
nasty surprise.
The first offer came back to me and said, okay, they'll pay 4,000 rand of the 30,000.
4,700. We should be fair and say that included the 2,000 rand excess that is always payable.
So yes, that's right. So it was 6,700
Yes.
that they offered. That's right. But I'm thinking like a real consumer
Of course,
now.
yes. What you landed up with.
Yes.
Okay, so 30,000 rand submitted, and they come back saying you're going to take home just over 4.5.
After 2,000 excess.
Why the huge discrepancy?
So there were two reasons. The first reason was they made a mistake, which was rectified. They forgot to include the BA portion in the settlement.
Which was about
11,000.
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
So that was great. So we got up to the total payment, then came up to about the offer came up to about 16,000 of the
about
30,000.
50%, just over.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the big reason for the difference and why I wanted so much to talk about it today is on this particular policy, they don't pay for the airport taxes and booking fees of the travel agent.
Which anybody who travels knows
you
is
can't
a
avoid
huge
them.
It's half.
Why
It's
should
half.
they not? I mean, it's just.
Is that a common exclusion? Had you
I
ever
did
heard
not,
of that before?
No. Well, on the offerings that I've taken to market before and that we will be taking to market soon, and for instance, I checked the market, the Santam policy would pay the airport taxes. So I was really, really shocked, and I was like, this can't be right. And then I read the wording for the first time, and I realized it is there. I can't push back against something that was very clearly stipulated in the policy wording. That they have a valid exclusion, and I couldn't fight it. But I just thought it's good to know that when you buy travel insurance, look at whether the policy covers airport taxes and the travel agent booking fees, because it makes up about 50% of your airfare if you book economy class. Obviously, if you book a business class, the portion of taxes will be much smaller.
Yeah.
So I took this to Hollard, and I asked, obviously, how do you come to 4,700 out of a 30,000 rand claim? And let's call it 6,700, because you're always going to have to pay an excess.
Yes, of course.
How does that excess sit, first of all, as a
I think
comparison in the market? That's
it is
about
quite-
what you'd
it's
expect.
fair, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So, and then I said, yes, I see the exclusion, 8.13, which states that you don't cover airport taxes and agents' fees. But does Hollard feel that this properly ticks the disclosure box? For example, it's not bolded. A lot of the things are bolded, but that isn't. Didn't get a response to that one. All they said was, we made an unfortunate error by not including that amount of 11,262 rand, and we've apologized, and
Which they did.
Which they've
they did.
rectified that.
Okay.
They've
Okay.
rectified that, yeah.
So setting aside the mistake portion of this, the bottom line that Christelle's here for is to make us aware of the fact that you should not just assume that your policy is going to cover the flight in full. And that this, Wendy, your point is that if you're going to exclude something as substantial as airport taxes or agent fees, you would be happy as a consumer activist to see that directly pointed out and highlighted.
disclosed as everything, and it should be something that's bolded, capitalized, whatever.
Or maybe shown as an optional extra to buy up.
Well, there you go. As the insurance expert.
Yeah.
So Wendy, there's another point that I would like to make about travel insurance. Travel insurance is something that you normally buy yourself.
Yes, it is.
On an online tool. So you
Sure.
go online as a consumer and you look at there's a table of comparisons and you buy it because you're booking your visa appointment and all those things. You don't have the advice of a broker or a consultant on a call that can talk
So
to
you're
you.
a bit of lamb to the slaughter, really.
Unless you do your homework properly.
Yeah.
And that's why, I love, I have many friends at Hollard. I think Hollard is a great insurance brand. They're a big player in the South African market. I just felt like a complete idiot for missing something so substantial. They paid my claim. They were,
Yeah.
but
If you
this
took
is
it to the Umbud, you wouldn't win.
no,
I mean, they've
no,
done what
no,
they
I
said
did
they were
no-
going to
they
do.
did nothing wrong.
Yes.
It is just something that I felt, if you are going to be comparing, going onto, the Santam travel site and the Old Mutual Insure travel site and the Hollard travel site, make sure that you look at this airport taxes exclusion when you buy your
You want
policy.
to avoid one with that exclusion.
Yes.
I mean,
Sure.
it's such a relevant thing to be talking about. As we sit, thousands of tourists are being evacuated from their hotels in Greece. Flights are being cancelled everywhere. There are heat waves in Europe that might be causing people to rethink their travel plans. Wendy, if ever there was a good time to be thinking about how much can go wrong that was
This is
completely
it.
unforeseen, this is it.
Yeah, so Christelle shared with me earlier today a story. What was the newspaper? Was it
It was a
Guard?
business day.
Oh,
business
our
day.
local business day.
Yeah.
It was actually, but it was a European Australian story, wasn't generated from here. And one of the questions, travel insurance now becomes huge, as you're saying. And one of the questions was, a lot of people will be wanting to cancel, not because their son broke their leg, but because they don't want to go into that kind of extreme heat. And would that be a valid reason? Would that be something that would be covered by your travel insurance? Certainly the airline wouldn't say, oh, okay, we understand, you have all your money back. But would your travel insurance cover it? And to me, I think not. What do you think?
No,
Christelle?
so this is one of the reasons why I bought the Hollard policy, because I thought it was such a nice benefit that they have, and I have to give them this credit, is they have a policy that's cancel for any reason.
Oh,
So that's why I could submit my claim, because they could say your son can stay at home, and why don't you go and still travel?
Or, just give him some crutches.
Take him with you. So they didn't question the reason why I cancelled the policy, which we have to give them credit for. So for an example like this, and there's other policies in the market that's got this cancel for any reason cover.
Another one to look for.
Another one to look out for, and make sure that you never know what's going to go wrong. It can be medical reasons. It can be a fire in Greece. It can be I don't know, I don't want to go anymore for whatever reason, and then you can submit a claim to your travel policy. Of course, you have to try and get, but my best advice really is, when you book your tickets, don't just book the cheapest tickets. That's a lesson that I learned.
Okay.
If now with this, there was this reason, if I just took the little bit of extra payment on the local flights which would have allowed me to cancel those flights or get credits, I wouldn't have been at a loss of 16,000 rand. So that's another tip, is just pay a little bit of extra so that you can cancel your ticket or transfer it into someone else's name.
As South Africans, we get so little bang for our buck when we travel overseas, and you can
know,
understand
it's
this
hard.
mentality of, I'm going to save every little bit I can, which is lovely if nothing goes wrong. But I mean, we're increasingly seeing things going wrong.
But my question, from a consumer perspective, and I don't know the answer to this, and maybe you can get it, is why are the airlines still not allowing us to cancel flights and get a refund because they booked up? With this Ital Rail example was so good. When I emailed them, they gave me a full credit immediately. Within half an hour, it was cancelled. Why are the airlines not doing the same? Because if they're
saying that they've got lack of capacity, so then they're going to be able to rebook your ticket if it's not last minute.
Yeah, if it's
or even if it is last minute. That's a good question. Let's
like Airbnb, you cancel up to 2 weeks before the time, 50%.
So after COVID, certainly with our domestic airlines, you did see a lot of flexibility coming in through. You're able to cancel for a refund or for a full refund minus a small fee. Whereas before it was you just lost out.
Sorry for you.
So now it's become a competitive thing, which is great for consumers, but they need to extend that.
Because
further.
that would just resolve the problem. All my accommodation got refunded through Booking.com 100%.
Oh, that's also good to know.
And the rail, but the flights, you
problem.
couldn't. And impossible to get hold of the airlines. Really impossible.
I can second that.
We've read so many horror stories of how people have struggled because they've gone with what looked like the cheapest possible deal that might have been a package through a third-party supplier that was a fly-by-night, and then it's impossible to get hold of anybody. And what you're saying is really ringing true for me. I'm thinking of, I'm a member of a couple of travel groups on Facebook, and so often we see these stories of people saying, I had this trip booked, I booked it through eDreams or whatever platform it was. We've done so many of them, Wendy. And when things go wrong, you cannot get hold of anybody, and you start to regret that decision that goedkoop is duurkoop, as they say in Afrikaans.
Especially with travel. I get so many of them as well. Remember those pensioners that wanted to go to Sun City or something? I managed to get them a refund in the end, but it was such a huge thing. People look forward to it, save up, go for a really attractive offer, and that's often the first red flag. Not that there aren't good bargains to be had, but I just wouldn't do it with a travel. There's too much money at stake. And personal everything, time and energy and planning.
And so somebody's just commented who says 15 years in the travel industry, the more expensive the ticket, the more flexibility you can expect. So you've got to juggle. What flexibility do you potentially need? Somebody's saying a fully flexible airline ticket can cost almost as much as a business class ticket and often double that of a saver ticket. It all substantially adds to your costs. It's not a small difference, as they say in the airfare. Christelle, just to circle back as we wrap up, I mean, you've mentioned that the free credit card cover is really insufficient for a number of cases. What is the bare minimum that you would get with that kind of cover?
So I can't comment on those sort of covers, and it's not fair to say that that all the credit card companies don't provide good travel insurance. And, it really depends on whether you're a private bank account holder and what benefits you have. And But if you are going to rely on the credit card cover, you have to do the homework and probably know that you're going to be disappointed if you don't do the homework. So my advice really is just like, buy the travel insurance, make sure that you understand what is covered and what is not covered, because you won't get the advice of a broker or a consultant on the other side of the line. You have to do it yourself. And I got caught, and with no disrespect to the insurance company involved, they've done nothing wrong. This is a shout out to the consumers. Do your work, because
look what can happen when you don't. And if Christelle Coleman can get caught out,
that was where we started.
Mortals.
What chance do we have? And yes, I would say though that the insurance company concerned should have a look at their disclosure, because it doesn't jump out at you that one line, clause 813, it really doesn't. And I think they could be called upon to, given the implications of it financially, that they need to make that a lot clearer.
Draw more attention to it. Okay. We're moving away from the topic of travel insurance into a second conversation about a local supplier who just doesn't seem to be supplying. And it's actually really interesting, because when we went back into our records, we knew that something about the story sounded familiar, and sure enough it was. It was in fact almost a year ago to the day, on the 27th of July last year, that we had our Consumer Talk feature that included a warning, a heads up, about several different service providers who were in the same boat of promising and taking deposits, but then not delivering what they'd paid for. And among several companies that we featured that day was a local blinds and shutters installer. And at the time, the complainant, James Webb, wrote in to say he and his wife had been about to move into their retirement flat, and the blinds they had ordered from the company had simply failed to materialize. They'd paid a 70% deposit on their order, which was roughly 24,000 Rand. And once they'd paid that deposit, nothing happened. The blinds didn't arrive on the day they'd been promised. Their requests for updates went unanswered. They then got into their car and physically drove to the address listed on the company's website, where they found a security guard who said, "Oh dear, not another one. That business hasn't been here for 3 years, but you're not the first people to arrive trying to find them, and for the same reason." Wendy, remind us what happened next.
Okay, so I did eventually manage to get hold of the owner, who told me that they were doing their best to deliver in the face of many variables, he said, including delays in imports and the lingering impact of COVID and related global shortages. He also mentioned very obliquely, he said he couldn't go into details, but there was a problem with a partner who'd done a dirty on them, something like that. Anyway, James still had to resort to rather extreme measures to get a refund, and quite clever ones. He got his son to pose as a potential new client, asking for a quotation, and then he literally doorstopped the owner when he arrived at his son's house, but he did get his money back.
Okay, now important to mention that back then we didn't name the business, and we didn't do that for several reasons. One of them being that James at that point was the only complainant that we had.
Yeah.
Secondly, we were mindful that it was a very difficult business environment. There were genuine global supply chain challenges affecting many businesses at that time. And thirdly, by the time we went to air, James had got his money back. So Wendy, at the time we took the decision not to name them, but we said if anybody else listening has had a similar experience with a Cape-based blind installer, please come forward and let us know.
I don't think either of us had any
nobody
such
did
feedback.
at that time, but that situation has not changed, unfortunately.
Yes, so I know that you've had some approaches on social media, Pippa, and this past week I've spoken to two couples who had a very similar experience to what James described to us last year. Both have paid deposits, one in the 20,000s and the other is much smaller, I think around 6,000. And the company involved is Cape Blinds and Shutters, the owner Leon Fulks. He took, in both those cases, took their money, failed to deliver their blinds, and that's why we are now revealing the identity of the company and its owner.
Because it's now multiple complainants.
And I looked on Hello Peter, and there were some recent ones there as well.
Okay, so look, what we're going to do is share the two case studies of those who came through to us with detail on their cases. Wendy, let's start with Max and Greta. Tell us a bit more. They were the smaller deposit, but nevertheless, it's money that is a substantial amount to them.
And this happened towards the beginning of the year, around February. They live in Chapman's Bay Estate. They found Leon's company online and invited him to quote on their blinds. Very, very smart website, very professional looking, very encouraging. So Leon visited them in early February to do a quote. He says they were very impressed by his professionalism. He did all the measuring, made recommendations, showed samples, and asked for a 6,000 Rand deposit. It was just one blind. And that was the end of it. Nothing further, no updates, no contacts, and certainly no blinds. So
Okay, they didn't take it lying down though, did they?
No. So they opened a case of theft at the Fishhook police station. Remember that featured in our story about the fireplaces? But weeks later, they were told that the case had been closed because the police couldn't contact Leon Volks. So then we heard from another James Davey, and he and his partner Patricia moved back to South Africa. James grew up in Kommetjie, I think he said, and they moved back to South Africa just 3 months ago after 30 years there.
Okay, so really excited to be starting a new life in Cape Town, and in fact we've got James with us on the line. So just to be very clear, it's a different James from the story we featured last year, but unfortunately a lot of similarities. James, lovely to have you with us. Thank you for being prepared to speak to us today. You also found Cape Blinds and Shutters via their website. Tell us a little bit about when you first started engaging with them and what happened.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks ever so much for having me on.
Sure.
So originally what we did is we obviously, as you mentioned, we came back to South Africa, came back to Cape Town, whatever, and bought a house and looking to do certain things to the house. And one of those things was putting blinds up. So we went online, had a look at a couple of, companies that are out there. And then quite simply, Cape Blinds and Shutters came up as one of the top companies on the front page.
Yeah.
And, looked at it very, very professionally laid out. All the information was there that you needed, reviews, that type of thing. So we've actually thought, no, let's give this guy a call. So we gave him a call. He came round. He popped round on the 9th of June. And very presentable, logos on the shirt, all that type of thing. Even had samples in a kind of a case of blinds, and his way of presenting himself and talking about issues and questions, answering questions, very professional. So it was straightforward. So we thought, no, this guy knows what he's talking about. We'll run with him. So we asked him for some quotes, and then after a bit of negotiating on the quotes, we settled on the price, and then that was it. He asked for a deposit, and like most companies over here that operate like this, we've all heard it before. 50%, 70% up front. We've done it on a few other contractors in the house. They've all delivered. It's been fine, and we didn't think about not paying it. So we paid it, and then ultimately he went underground for about 10 days. So I gave him a call. No answers whatsoever, and just kept trying on WhatsApp and nothing. And then eventually, I got to the point where I just emailed him and just said, listen, what's happening here? I haven't heard from you. You said you would install within 10 to 14 days. Haven't heard from you. It's been over 2 weeks now. Can you give us an update on progress? Mm-hmm. No reply. So, somebody then, told me about Hello Peter, and that was just a horror show just going on there, and then seeing all the the replies from people on Hello Peter, and then I knew, there was an issue, and we'd been done. Did
you take any further steps at that point, James? What did you do?
So what I did is I wrote to him and said, listen, I said, kind of worried a little bit, seen some bad reviews on the business. Can you just explain yourself? Are you, what's happening? And he actually did reply, and he sent me a couple of emails. He only replies through his sales email address connected to the business. No other form of communication on that site or business works. In fact, I think the telephone number is actually just a made-up number. It just goes nowhere. So he came back to us, wrote just the biggest cock and bull story I've ever heard in my life. Just came back with basically the following. His phone had been stolen. He was in Vincent Pallotti Hospital for a week.
It was actually, I looked at that, James. He sent you the admission thing, but if you look at it carefully, it was one night of the 1st of July, from what I could see, yes.
Okay, so there, yet another lie. So anyway, so that carried on, and I said to him, listen, I understand how difficult it is to start a business, and run a business, etc. And because he actually did in the email ask me, just said, listen, I've had some issues with, with my business partner. He's done the dirty on me. I'm trying to get the business back off the ground, blah, blah, blah. And, can you basically give us another chance. And then he actually put on the email, or we're happy to refund you. And I said, no, listen, we lost all faith in the business completely. Just send us a refund. And he said he would do that immediately as soon as he gets a mobile phone up and running, because his phone, as I said, got stolen.
When was that, James? How long ago did he make that promise?
Yeah, I know, it's 3 weeks ago. I know the day exactly because I was driving to the golf course so, when he was talking about it. But no, that's what he said. So I said, listen, that's fine. Just you've got 24 hours to do it. Otherwise, we're gonna pursue you. And no, I've taken steps. I've contacted attorneys, that type of thing. He's got letters on the way. Obviously, I found you guys to be incredibly insightful to help me take this a little bit further. So ideally, what I'm trying to do is just go after this guy. And since I've been speaking to you and other friends of mine, ultimately I found out that Max also was done in the similar type of fashion on Chatham's Bay Estate. Mm-hmm. So we're putting something together really to try and flush this guy out and try and get more people that have had the similar scenario just to come forward, so we can actually take this whole thing to the police properly and say, listen, what are you going to do about this? We've got a multiple offender here who's just taking people for a ride big time. And
the story hasn't changed in the past year. I mean, Wendy, as you referenced, that mention of, my business partner did dirty was the same excuse he gave you with the previous case a year ago today.
Yeah, and what has changed, though, is he hasn't responded to me this time. I used the same address, I sent him a media query.
And he hasn't engaged at all.
He hasn't engaged. I tried to phone his cell phone. It goes straight into voicemail. I left a message. The landline number that he advertises, on his website, if you phone it, this is what you hear.
I'm sorry, that is not a recognized phone number.
Okay, so it's a non-existing phone number. What about, you've always said to us, look for a website that has an address, a physical address. So this one does, but only ish.
Well, James, you said that you did I think the other chap last year actually drove there. You said you did a search and you came up with some cash and carry. What address did you use? Because the address currently on the website just says Moorsum Avenue, Cape Town. So you can't claim he's not there because you can't contact every single business, which I think is quite clever. Did you pick up a particular number, Moorsum Avenue, from some of his correspondence or something?
No, so basically, all I did was just, when I looked at his Google address, whatever, if you look at sort of Google Ads, that type of thing, and also look at Google Maps, it actually takes you straight to a street, where you can pan around like 360 degrees.
Oh, but you didn't get an actual number. So
no, I just used the address that actually is advertising on his website, which is, like you said, it's no number.
Yes,
so it's not like 23, whatever. And there it was, and it's just this cash and carry. So, my past, I have my own, business in the UK for a while, and I have an e-commerce website there, and his website's actually very well structured. So, the fact that it it actually appears on the top of the page.
Yeah, that costs money, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's probably spending some good money on, SEO and that type of thing to actually keep coming up at the top. There's a lot of there's a lot of blind companies in Cape Town.
Yes,
we check them out, and
yes.
And it comes up high, and so he's got to be active. He's got to be actively, pursuing that website to actually get the trade that way, so people call in. But yeah, I know. If I had a physical address, I would have been there by now.
Yeah. Well, James, I want to thank you for being willing to share the story with us as you've done today. And obviously, we're going to keep in touch. Please let us know if you do hear back from him, if you do get your refund, which I sincerely hope you might. But if we hear from anybody else who is interested in chatting to you about being part of your attempt to bring him to justice and to lodge a case with police, we'll obviously connect them with you off air. So if anybody listening to this is going, me too, this is my story I'm listening to, please do connect with us and we'll connect you with James as part of the effort to get some deposits refunded at the very least. Wendy, is there anything else James can do at this point?
No, not really. No. If he'd paid with a credit card, he could have done a charge back, but that wasn't the case. James, I'm guessing it was an EFT that you simply did into his bank account.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So, yeah, my main question I asked was, are you going to be refunding James? I hadn't heard Max's story yet, but obviously Max as well, and I included very recent reviews on Hello Peter. But as I say, the last time there was engagement, this time same address. I just couldn't get him on by any means. What he's doing is, I said, well, how do his customers get hold of him then? Well, you engage via the website, you contact him, whatever, and then it's done. Then he contacts you via email.
So protecting himself. James, again, thank you for joining us, and let's keep in touch and hope that there might be, at the end of the road, a happy outcome to the story.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Cheers, guys.
Appreciate it, James Davey.
Thank you,
And
James.
interesting to hear from a couple of people responding just in general terms, not to the specific experience. But
Yes.
Vic mailing to say, I've just had blinds put in. I got quotes from 2 different places, including one that had installed some for me many years previously. I went and checked their Google and Facebook reviews to ensure that they also still did exist. And this is interesting. He says one of them wanted a 50% deposit. The other one wanted no deposit at all.
That's
then
unusual.
To this, Dani would agree with that, because Dani's messaged me to say 10 years ago, living in Canada, a painter taught me a great life lesson. Very South African of me, I offered to pay a deposit or buy the materials for the job. And his response to me was, if his suppliers, who had known him for many years, couldn't give him 30 days credit, why should I give him a deposit after a relationship of 5 minutes? Since then, I just do not do it. If you have no credit, you're not credit worthy. At best, I buy the materials directly and have them delivered to me, but I never pay a deposit
very good,
anymore.
Dani.
And Dani, I bet Angelo is listening and applauding, because our DIY man has said the same thing to us many times before. Be very, very careful about deposits paid, particularly for the purchase of materials, and who owns those materials when they've been purchased with your money.
Exactly.
Is something to be very careful about as well.
And I love that if you have no credit, you aren't credit worthy. I mean, you're not an established enough player to be able to get goods from your supplier. I would say if you have an established relationship with somebody that has done work for you previously. But then again, our other advice is always check recent reviews, because sometimes people start off well. And you go on that, and meanwhile, so always
Something
go
has
into
gone
Hello
wrong.
Peter
Yeah.
or Trustpilot. Don't trust the reviews on the website of the company itself, because this company has rave reviews, and clearly they aren't to be trusted. In fact, the claim on the website is Cape Blinds and Shutters is one of Cape Town's leading blinds and shutters installers. We take pride in being regarded as one of the most reliable and affordable blinds and shutter companies in the country. Regarded by whom, I would say. And another thing which James didn't mention was his prices were very good, just slightly cheaper than what was out there. And that, unfortunately, is not usually the sign of a bargain. It's the sign that you're going to be had.
That's okay. As you said earlier about the travel insurance, Wendy, it's so appealing to all of us tightening our
Watching
belts,
our pennies.
operating on a tight budget,
Yeah.
to be taken in by something like that. So again, if anybody listening to this is recognizing the story, and you're one of the others who have been affected in similar ways to the cases we've shared with you today, drop me an email, please, to pippah@capetalk.co.za if you'd like to be connected with James. He's made the request that he would like to build I don't know if you would call it a class action, Wendy, but he would like to get a good body of evidence to take to police to get them to take this seriously.
They don't take one case
Yeah,
seriously.
because look what happened last time. The previous
Yes.
complainant made the effort to lodge a case, and it was like, oh, well, sorry, we couldn't find him. There wasn't a lot of energy behind it. There wasn't a lot of
Yeah, that was in
willingness to
February.
address it. Whereas if you go with, here are 8, 9, 10 people who have been defrauded,
Different story.
it's very much harder for them to shrug their shoulders and look away. So again, if you want to, drop me an email to pippah@capetalk.co.za. I think we've got time to squeeze in an open line question which has come through, Wendy, and I think it's one that you should be able to respond to a little off the cuff. A question asking about the legal requirements of stores who are selling things to put their pricing in the public eye. The complainant says all the biltong shops and mall kiosks never seem to have prices listed. It makes it very difficult to price and know what you're buying. It's hard and inconvenient to have to ask the assistant for every single product. And their comment is that many of the vet shops are doing the same thing with the food products that they sell. Remind us, if you're selling something, are you obliged to
Yes.
publish the price on every item?
Absolutely.
Without exception.
It's a requirement in terms of the Consumer Protection Act for this reason. They're banking on people coming and saying, could I have 50 rands worth of biltong or whatever the case may be, and not really knowing the price or being able to compare the price, etc. A few years ago, when I was still living in Durban, I went around to a lot of biltong shops.
Yeah.
And I didn't find one that was displaying their prices. And I made a big hoo-ha, named and shamed, asked some of them why. And one said, because the price is so high, we don't want to put people off.
Oh,
I mean,
hello.
I think it's more, let's not let them compare prices, but biltong prices, it's like an industry thing. They all do it. It doesn't make it right. Vet shops, I've seen some that will have one sign sort of right at the bottom, tiny, that says your 5 kilogram bag is this, your whatever, with a different, but it's confusing. It should be, as with any other goods in any other retail store, there should be under the place on the shelf that says that's for the 5 kilogram bag of whatever, there should be a price. You shouldn't, as a consumer, have to go hunting for a price, or as they're hoping that you get to the till, it rings up as 900 and something rand, and you go, but now this huge bag sitting on the counter, your dogs need the food, and you don't want to quibble over it, over this huge. So my advice is push back. Don't just accept it. Name and shame. Do all of that. Because it's not okay. It drives me wild with indignation that companies and whole industries just choose to flout a very key section of the act for their own ends. Never mind the consumer. That offends my sense of justice massively. Okay. So speak out. Let us know. Give us examples. Let's phone them. Let's say, how do you justify this? Yeah. And see and then follow up to see if there are any changes.
Well, speaking of which, somebody's just WhatsApped to say that drives me mad. Pick n Pay does this all the time. Only prices on certain products. Oh. Have you had any feedback on whether Pick n Pay has acted on the adjustment of their pricing policy?
It's very recent, only 2-3 weeks at most. But it's something I feel very strongly about. Just to recap for listeners, Pick n Pay, commendably, along with the ShopRite group, used to put the selling price, say something was $29.99. In the bottom left corner, they would put the per kilogram price. So that was the actual price of the good, the unit price, that you can then compare other products that may not be exactly the same pack size, and or to check whether the big box is really a better deal per gram or per kilogram than the smaller one. And they've introduced some new shelf labels that will enable them to do some marketing there on the shelf on that label. And the unit price fell off. And I'm told by Pick n Pay that they didn't say we hope to, or we may, or we're discussing. They said we will be returning. Yes. So right now, 50% of the labels countrywide are the old ones with the unit price, and the other half don't have it, driving quite a few listeners mad, but I promise you I will definitely be keeping tabs on that. I'll wait another few weeks and then say any progress, and I will keep doing so until we have a definitive answer.
Thank you for that. Just going back to the deposits, fair point from somebody on the WhatsApp line saying with regards to deposits, the reverse can also be true, where businesses have lost out due to unscrupulous customers, which is often why deposits might be asked for on both sides. This person's advice is that you check that the company is registered with a governing body, because that gives you some teeth then, Wendy. If they're not playing ball, you could refer up to whatever association it is that governs that industry.
Yes, but I would say, and although the 70 thing has in recent years become the norm, it wasn't when I started out 25 years ago. Yeah. I would say if you're going to pay a deposit, both parties, for risk reasons, should have equal skin in the game. So you should never pay more than 50%, in my opinion. I don't care if that's become the norm. It's serving the service provider, and I do get there are some unscrupulous consumers. I often have small business owners saying, well, you're watching out for the consumers. Who's watching out for us? Who do we go to? And fair comment, but not more than 50%. I wouldn't advise it. Okay. So negotiate it. If they want your business, they'll accept it.
Wendy, thanks as always for the work you do following up on these cases for our listeners. And I just want to finish by reminding that if you'd like to raise a case with Wendy, her email address is consumer@knowler.co.za, KNOWLER. I just want to say again, it's not possible for us to respond to every single case. It's just humanly impossible. Wendy receives hundreds of them every month, and she is a one-woman operation working valiantly in all the available hours to her. But please, to vastly increase your chances of being helped, make sure all of the information, including reference numbers, account numbers, dates, addresses, full names of companies that you dealt with, email addresses, put it all in that single email, send it to consumer@knowler.co.za. Please do put the words CapeTalk in the subject line, and we'll do our best to cover as many as we can.
Lunch with Pippa Hudson on CapeTalk.